Good evening, everyone. My name is Heather Turner, and I am a Toastmaster in District 53. I am currently a member of the Cromwell Community Toastmasters Club and Enfield Speech Weavers, and I am also the district. I keep saying governor, but it's no longer governor, it's director for areas 63 and 64, and I am the District 53 social media chair. And today we will be talking about blogging for Toastmasters. So I do have a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. One is we will be recording this broadcast and it will be available on the Toastmasters District 53 website tomorrow. And if you have questions as we go along, there should be a box to the right-hand side where you can type in questions as they occur to you. And I will address any questions at the end of the webinar. I would ask that if you do have a question, ask it as it occurs to you because you may forget later on. Now, to begin with, I'm going to go and show you a couple of different types of blogs that are out there for Toastmasters. Blogs are terrific ways for Toastmasters to get the word out there about their clubs. Why specifically is that so? The primary reason are Google and Bing and Yahoo, all the search engines, love blog content. And anything that you post for blog content is going to be around forever. We have a blog for Cromwell Community Toastmasters, for example, that's been around for several years, and several of our blog posts are still getting picked up years later. I have a business blog, for example, and this is a really good example of it. In that blog post that I've written 6 years ago, when someone searches for a specific thing, then that particular item comes up on page 1 of Google search. And so any content that you're posting in a blog is always sort of fresh and alive in the minds of search engines because they love that content. Now, there's two primary blog platforms that I would recommend. One is blogger.com, which is owned by Google, and Google, of course, loves its own content. The other is wordpress.com, and I say .com because there's also a version called wordpress.org. And if you're setting up a blog for the first time, I recommend that you go with the .com version. The .org version requires purchase of a domain name and purchase of hosting, and also someone that's rather technically inclined to actually installing it on hosting. So it's a bit different than the .com version, and it's not free because you do have to pay for services for it. Here we have an example of, this is a blogger blog, Goodyear Toastmasters. And the nice thing about blogs is, the layouts can be very different. They can be customized. They can look just like your website, whether you have a free Toast 2 website or another type of website. So they can very much be customized to go with the Toastmasters branding and colors, or if you want to be unique and set up your own type of branding, that is, of course, doable as well. But the format is very changeable, and I'll show you that a little bit later. So this is an example of a blogger blog. Now let's close this one up. Here's an example of another type of blogger blog with a slightly different format. And note that each of these has additional things that they can add to it. You can have multiple pages on a blog, just like on a website. Many Toastmasters are actually using blogs as their websites because they are easily editable, because they can have multiple people be administrators of the blogs and update the content. And this is nice because you can also add a lot of external links. You can add imagery. You can add your favorite blog posts. You can add links to, whatever else you'd like and whatever other content you'd like. The best way to find some other Toastmaster blogs is actually just to Google Toastmaster blogs or Toastmaster club blogs. This is an example of a WordPress site, for example. That's a Toastmaster site. This is another WordPress site. And as you can see, there are differences in layouts and colors, and all of those are very editable because both of these formats have templates that you can arrange and rearrange at anytime that you'd like. There are many, many other blog platforms out there that you can use. I recommend Blogger and WordPress.com primarily because those are the two primary ones used. But any blog content and any blog platform is usable, and it really honestly doesn't matter which one you use. It's the content that counts. It's not the particular name brand or the platform itself. There are paid blogging platforms that you can use, but because the good ones are free, I really don't recommend doing them. Save your money for something else that you need that can contribute towards the club. Now we're going to go into, for a moment, the back end. This is a Blogger blog. This is our Cromwell Toastmasters blog. And this is actually something, if you have a chance, I would go and look for cromwelltoastmasters.blogspot.com. This is a blog post I wrote about 4 years ago, 20 blogging ideas for Toastmasters. So if you're looking for content to blog about, this can give you just a good rundown of, for example, if you're running out of ideas, what you can put on there. There are pretty much no limits to blogging. There are no rules and regulations to it. There's some things that I would suggest, some things that I would recommend, and some things that I would stay away from. The great thing about blogs, though, is people think, oh my God, blogging, it's got to be a novel. Well, blogging does not have to be a novel. Blogging can be short and sweet. If you have a contest, for example, you can take some photos of the contest and you can just put the blog winners up. That's your post. If you have meeting minutes, for example, and that's primarily now what we use our Cromwell blog for, is we post our meeting minutes on there. If we have contests, for example, we post the results. So here you can see the meeting minutes, for example, it's here. And why is this good content to put on? It's great for a couple of reasons, because A, the search engines pick this up, and B, if you have people that are interested coming to visit your club, you can go back and say, hey, you know, this is what an average meeting looks like. These are some of the things that we do, some of the things that we've talked about. Here's an example of some table topics we've covered, or some speeches that we've talked about and what they were about. And this is also good for a third reason, because if you have a VP of membership, perhaps that needs to drop out, that is not attending as much as they should be, Vice President of Education, and you really need to track who is doing what, putting your minute meetings up here gives you a very good record for when you need to come back near the end of the year and find out who has come close or who needs some more work on completing their competent leader or their CL manual duties, because you can go back and you can say table topics master was X, and so was an evaluator, and so was a grammarian, and you can see the date then. It's a great way for anybody to go back and track for your Vice President of Education or your incoming Vice President of Education, if maybe you need to do a little catch-up, to make sure that people are getting their educational goals and getting credit, more importantly, for their educational goals. Now this is the back end of Blogger for a minute, and I'll come back here in just a moment. Now this is the back end of WordPress, and as you can see, there's a lot more options than Blogger. So I'll switch back and forth just so you can see the difference between the two. WordPress gives you a lot more bells and whistles than Blogger does. What I would recommend, depending on how, creative you're feeling and tech savvy you feel you are, create an account on both WordPress.com and on Blogger.com. Play around with the back end, play around with the appearance, the templates, all the different things that you can do with it, and then decide which platform you're going to use. Realistically, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter which one you're going to use in the long term, but both of them, you need to feel comfortable using it. And the more comfortable you feel using it, the easier it's going to be both for you to personally use it and to get other people in the club to use it, and also teach your successor, if someone else is going to take it over at this point, how to use it. Blogger.com is by far the easier of the two to use, but again, as I mentioned, it does not have as many bells and whistles as WordPress does. Well, let me close this one up just for a second. Now, both of these, I'm going to start with Blogger, for example. Both of these, and just to revisit this for a moment, when you start these two blogs up, you cannot break these. So the best way to teach yourself how to do this is log in, create blogs. It will walk you through every step of the way. It'll ask you the name, which you can go back and change at any time. It'll ask you the title of your blog, which you can also go back and change at any time. And it will ask you the layout and the look of your blog. And you can also change that at any time as well. There is nothing in either type of blogs or any type of blogging software that you cannot go back and revisit. If you've published a blog post a year ago and someone else reviews it and says, hey, by the way, we've got the date wrong or we've got some typos in it, you can go back at any time and fix those, which is the wonderful thing about blogs. But again, it's the content that's important. Now, to start with Blogger, for example, all of these things, there's posts in here, there's pages. And posts, for example, this is very easy to work with, and I'll get back to this in a second. All of these are a list of all of the blog posts that have been published. Pages are separate pages, just like on a website. This particular blog does not have any pages to it, but you can add them quite easily. Comments are something that you can have a couple of different ways. You can have them moderated, you can have no comments, or you can have open comments. I would recommend from a Toastmasters perspective, because you may not be on this all the time, to either have no comments enabled or to have moderated comments, which means that if someone has a comment that someone actually has to go in, an administrator has to go in and approve that comment before it gets posted. While we don't get a lot of spam comments, meaning someone will come to your blog post and say, hey, we're, selling fake Lexus cars, at this address, they do come along occasionally. And, you don't want to see things for ads for unsavory things on your blog post or on your blog comments. So like I said, you might either want to have them moderated, which is what I suggest, or to have no comments at all. If you do blog continuously, whether it's just posting meeting minutes and club information, or you're actually blogging about Toastmasters in general, suggestions, you could have people's speeches that they wrote to give put on there for other people's ideas. There's no limit to the amount of blog content that's out there. But if you don't get any comments or a lot of comments, it does not mean that you're doing it wrong. It just means that most Toastmasters blogs and most business blogs, realistically, unless they've got thousands and thousands of people reading it daily, are not going to get a lot of comments. So it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean you're doing it badly, so don't worry about it. Blogger.com does give you some statistics. If you have enabled Google Analytics for your blog, you can actually tie your Google Analytics account into Blogger, and you can also tie it into WordPress. Earnings are something that you have the option of doing. It can tie into Google AdSense. It's not something that I would recommend doing, especially for Toastmasters, for two reasons. One, it just makes your blog look cheap, that you're advertising other things of which you have very little control over, if no control over. And B, the average statistics and incoming hits and unique readers that a Toastmasters blog is going to get, you might end up making about 5 cents a year. So that's not realistically worth having those ads on your blog. Now, the layout and the template are two very important things. Let me go into the template first. And when you click on this, again, you can go back and edit this at any time. You'll see these options. These are simple dynamic views, picture window, awesome, and they've added some fairly newer things recently. But you can go in and customize this. And I really encourage people to just go and play around in this. It's very, very user-friendly. There is nothing that you can do in here that cannot be undone. Backgrounds can be added. You can adjust widths, for example. So as you have, I mean, this particular blog only has a right-hand sidebar, but it will see, you can edit this sidebar so you can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, you can have more content for this, for example. And nothing is going to get saved until you hit up at the top right, apply to blog. So you can make changes to the template itself to see what it would look like, and it won't apply it until you actually hit apply to blog. If you just click out of this or you click back to Blogger, it will not save any of the changes that you've put in. When you go into layout, for example, these are, again, this is where you can change the look of your blog and the layout of your blog. So all of these different things are options. This advanced tab has things like backgrounds, your links, your blog description, and it will actually highlight any of the things that you're editing so you know what in particular you're editing, which is very, very helpful. Gadgets, for example, see these particular things are highlighted. Mobile button color. And the nice thing again about Blogger and WordPress is both of these formats are mobile friendly. FreeToast Host 2 is not currently mobile friendly, but if you do set up a blog for your club, your blog is going to be mobile friendly. So the odds of someone searching for a Toastmasters club in whatever area you're in and coming up in search is going to be high, and they can actually read your blog. And I'd also suggest if you do set up a blog, put on, for example, the fact where your meeting time is, when you meet, your meeting schedule, and put some additional information about your club in your blog, for example. So again, I would recommend really coming in here, just playing around with all of this. All of this is editable and nothing saves. So I'm going to go back to Blogger, for example, and it's going to say unapplied changes. So in this case, I don't want to change the format of this blog, so I'm going to leave this page. Now the other thing here is that's the template. So I'm going to go into layout. And layout is where you've set it primarily in the template, but it's going to give you all of these different options, for example. So you're going to hit add a gadget if you want to add things, and you can hit people can subscribe to your blog by email, and it will give you all of these different options that can be added or taken off, for example, anytime you'd like, but there's all these options in here that you can add to a blog. Well, let me go back up to posts. Now, when you want to add a new post, if you can use Microsoft Word or any other document, that's very, very easy to use. So you'll go into, let me go back for a second. You'll go into add a new post. And then this is important. You want to make sure that you add a post title because this is going to be determined by the URL for your blog post. I'm going to put in this is a post title. And why is this important? So let me bring you back to this, for example. Each blog post has its own unique URL. So the title of the blog, for example, is cromwelltoastmasters.blogspot.com. And each of these blog titles has its own unique URL. And so when you're sharing this content on your Facebook club page, for example, or any other content that you have, if you're sharing it off of your website, then all of these things are going to be shareable. My apologies for the interruption. If you could hold on for just a moment, it appears that we have someone at the door that I really need to get, so I will be back in less than 2 seconds, so hold on, please. My deepest apologies about that. In any case, as I was saying, this URL is something that you're going to want to share the whole thing when you're sharing it on other social media or when you're sending a link, for example, to a potential guest. If you just send them this one, which is your primary URL, if they're looking for something particular or you want to highlight something in particular, then they're going to have to go back and search through your blog for specifics. So that's not really helpful to them. So make sure that you put in a post title because that's going to affect each and every URL that you have. Now, what you can do when you're writing blog posts is to write them in Microsoft Word or any other format and then simply paste them in here. When you write it in Microsoft Word, it's actually going to pick up the formatting from that. So if I pasted something, for example, like this, and the formatting was off, I could hit this, which is remove formatting. And then it would change to whatever it is that you'd like to do. And you can play around with this. It's a very, very simple format. You can change from large. You can change the font that's in here. If you do have a link that you're putting in, there's a couple of different ways to add a link. One is to add the actual link itself. And what you'll do is you'll highlight this, you'll copy it, and then you'll go to link. And this will actually link this to something that's live. Now, what I would recommend if you're linking to somewhere offsite, you're going to want to hit change and then make sure this says open this link in a new window. And what that means, if someone's reading your blog, for example, it means that someone linking to something or that you're linking to something, it's going to link to something that's going to open up in a completely new window. And why do you want this? Because if someone clicks on something and it leads away from your blog, they're not going to go back. They'll get distracted from this. So what you want to make sure is that your blog window is still open. So in this case, I'm going to go OK. Now say this, for example, I'm going to copy this again. You don't necessarily have to put the whole URL in there as the link. There's nothing to say that's the wrong way to do it, but in terms of shortening space, you can also say, well, this is the link that we're going to use. So you'd highlight your text, and then you go to link, and you'd paste it in. And so now this is a hot link as well. Now let's go down to post settings. And there's some nice bells and whistles in both WordPress and Blogger. And in both WordPress and in Blogger, adding a link is actually extremely similar. And this dashboard itself for editing and formatting is also quite similar. The major difference between WordPress and Blogger is one says labels and the other one says tags and categories. Now, labels, for example, is important because you want to make sure anything that you have labeled is pertaining to your blog content. So, for example, if I was talking about these are meeting minutes, I would put in Cromwell Community Toastmasters meeting minutes. And that would help categorize what we were talking about. Once you've entered something, it will appear in here so you can actually auto-select, for example, anything that you're looking for. And once you're done, you'll hit done. And again, if you type something in, for example, and you make a mistake, you can always go back and edit it again. You know, the other nice thing about this is you can schedule things. So if you wanted to write up some blog posts in advance or just get ahead of it, or say maybe you didn't want your blog post being published on a Sunday, which is when your normally blog post time came out, or you were awake at 2 in the morning, you can type your blog post in and then you can set the date and time in advance and time itself that you're going to have it published. So I'm going to change this to September 30th at 7:53 p.m. and then done. And this will automatically publish to the web at that particular time period. Now say I just wanted to start a blog post, but I didn't want to finish it particularly. I would just hit save, and then it would save it as a draft. So let's go to save. And then I'm going to go back to my list of blog posts, for example, and it will say right here, this is a draft. So I could go back to edit it, I could preview it, or I can delete it. And in this case, because it was just a test, I'm going to delete it. Now, the nice thing about blogs are you can have multiple administrators for it, or you can have multiple writers for it. And you'll find that in the settings section. So I would recommend going through the back end of Blogger, and I do recommend Blogger for most Toastmasters clubs. Again, it's very, very easy to use. You know, pretty much anybody, if you're going to have multiple administrators or you're not going to have the same people year after year that are necessarily going to know what they're doing with this, it's by far the easiest to use and easiest to understand. But again, you know, go with what your gut feels and ask the club, how do they feel about this? And you can always switch formats at any time. If you start something on Blogger and then you go over to WordPress, I would say the one thing that it would be careful to do is to make sure that you don't delete your blog. Don't delete your blog content, and don't take the blog content and transfer it over to the new blog. You will lose any SEO value that you have at that point. So right here we have administrators, for example. We have a bunch of people in our club that can administrate this account. And you can also add additional authors. But you can also change these people so they don't have administrative content. They only have authorship content. Authorship means they can only publish posts. They can't edit any of the rest of this. So let me go back into WordPress, for example. Things are a little bit different in here. We have themes, which is the same as Blogger content and Blogger layout. So it's just taking a moment. Now, all of these themes are available, and again, you can change your content or change your theme at any particular time. Most of these are customizable. Some of them are not free, but you can preview them in advance to see what they look like. There are also widgets similar to Blogger where you can add them and you can delete them. You can also have pages. The posts adding are a little bit different. We'll go into Add New just so you can see what they look like. But it is very much set up the same way, where you have add the title here, you have add your information. In Blogger, it will say add photos. Here it will say add media. It does the same thing, but as you can see, it's got similar options for different things. Here's add a link, remove a link. And here's what I was talking about, save draft. You can do the same thing, publish immediately, or you can set it to pre-schedule. And this is probably one of the major differences is categories. These you can all set up in advance. So you could have a category for meeting minutes. You could have a category for club contest. You could have a category for speeches. And then tags. Tags are relating specifically to the post content itself. In terms of what else to blog about, again, I would recommend going back to Cromwell Community Toastmasters and looking for that post about blogging ideas. Right now, because it is getting a little bit late, if anyone has any questions, I'd love to take some questions now. Where can we get photos? Okay, photos are something that you have to be very, very careful about. And this goes into copyright because you don't want to take photos or images directly from the web where you do not know the provenance of them. That's extremely important because the copyright or the photo or the image itself could be copyright protected. And if you get in trouble from someone like Getty Images, for example, your club could get socked with a $1,500 bill for usage. And it doesn't matter whether you remove the image right away, they're still going to make you pay up. People do run into issues with blogs and with websites where they go to Google and they type in free images and they come across all of these sites that say, oh, free images, free clip art. I would caution people very, very strongly against using those sites because you don't know where they originated from. Many of the images have Digimarc watermarks, which means that you cannot actually see the watermark in them. And people like companies like Getty Images, for example, have little digital spiders that run around the web looking for those embedded copyright symbols, and then people get in trouble for that. So I would recommend taking club photos, taking photos of something if you're blogging about something specifically that's related. Maybe you have one of your members is talking about, how they raced horses when they were a kid. Have one of the club members or have them go out and take their own pictures with their iPhone of, an area horse stable, just so you know the provenance of the image that you're putting in there. Because what we really don't want to do is have our clubs get in trouble with us. The other thing that you can do is if your club has a large enough budget, you can go out and buy stock photos. There are sites like dreamstime.com, Big iStock Photo, quite a few others where you can buy high quality imagery for as little as $1. So if you can't take them yourselves, I would recommend buying them. The one site that I could recommend as a possible place to source free photos is one called Morgue File. Morgue as in like going to the morgue. But those files and those photos are, as far as I know, for many, many years safe. It's the photographers themselves that are uploading them. There are some new sites that have come out that I'm looking at, but again, I'm not totally positive of the provenance of those photos, so you're better off being safer than sorry. Okay, some other questions about these. Yes, both types of blogs, both Blogger and WordPress, you can have multiple contributors. Where should we place our blog posts? Okay, I think you mean where should you place your the blog links itself. One, if you have a club website, I would recommend definitely linking to your blog from the club website. If your club has a Facebook business page or a club page, a Twitter account, a Google Plus account, a Pinterest account, Pinterest accounts, actually, not a lot of Toastmasters are using Pinterest, but there are a few. If your blog post has imagery in it, if it has photos in it, and you're going to use Pinterest, make sure that you start pinning your photos from your blog to Pinterest, to your Pinterest account, because it can help traffic. But if you have any of those other types of accounts, share that blog post and share the blog links on all of them. Anytime you've published a new blog post, make sure that you put that blog title and the blog link on your social media platforms. And also ask your members to share. So if you have a great blog post that you've written about, John Doe's speech talking about, how he got fired from his last job and it was the best thing that ever happened to him because he got this fabulous new job, and it was really interesting and really well written and really well spoken. Ask him to share that blog link on his personal Facebook page too. The more traffic that you can, and the more places that you can place those links, the more traffic your blog will get long term. Okay. Do I have any other questions? How long does it take to start the average blog post or set one up? That's a tough question for me personally to answer. I set so many of these up. I know that walking someone through setting up a Blogger blog, for example, takes about half an hour to explain it to me, takes about half an hour for me to explain it to them. But because you've seen the back end of this, I think setting one up initially will actually be quite quick. It really takes about 5 minutes to actually set one up. And then, the long term or the long part of it is actually poking around through all of this back end stuff and poking around through all the back end of WordPress, for example, and seeing what all of this stuff does. And again, I would really encourage people to set up both a WordPress.com site and a Blogger.com site. Poke around in the back end, set up some of the templates, customize the look and feel of it, get comfortable with it, and then go with your gut and use the one that you're going to feel is going to be the best for your club. You can, of course, use blogs as a website if you don't have a website set up for the club. Both of them are great for search engine optimization. Both of them are mobile friendly. But in terms of social media and how much bang for your buck blogging can be for your club, this is by far one of the better venues to do. Does anybody have any more questions? Okay, I see one more coming in. How often should you blog? The nice thing about blogging is there are no rules to this. So a blog can be published once a week and be published once a month. It can be published every 3 weeks and then a week later. If you do consistently want to blog, I would suggest trying to do a couple a month or at least once a month. And again, make sure you share those blog links. There's nothing to say that if you only post once every couple months, you're doing it wrong. But the more often you blog, the more chance that your club is going to get found in search traffic. So if someone is Googling, for example, Hartford, Connecticut Toastmasters, the more content you have in your blog referencing Hartford Toastmasters and the more content that you're putting out there, the higher both your blog and your club website are going to show up in search engine results. So that's important to remember. Does anybody have any more questions? Okay, if people don't have any more questions, I do encourage people to reach out to me afterwards if there's anything has occurred to them that they don't think of. If you go on to the District 53 Toastmasters website, my contact information is on there under district leadership. And again, my name is Heather Turner. We have taped this, and thank you so much for attending tonight's webinar. Really appreciate it. So have a great night, everybody.